I love
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
He never learns.
I'll just
Never
keep it
learns.
going through the whole show.
No,
Oh yeah.
the system.
Yeah, yeah.
Ah,
Keep it going through the whole show.
Shall we mute you, Ralph?
all no, please not. It's simply that technology and digital workplace is simply the example I just jumped in to show you, the audience, that you are at the right place. There is a lot of fun to come. There's a lot of things to learn, to listen, and to digest. And there is also the fabulous wrong click on the wrong knob. And trust me, I'm the so-called most unexpected, an unconditioned user, the most stupid one you can find on the whole planet. Such as I find the push the button, which is giving me a hard time in the way of that I just muted the other check boxes for LinkedIn and Facebook. And the moment it went live, ta-da, I had plenty of sound. Now,
It keeps us
yeah,
on our toes.
yeah,
Everything's a surprise.
absolutely. And it is fantastically going forward into the direction that we have today an expert on the digital workplace. And Dave, welcome to our little screens and fantastic opportunity to have you, not that we watch you, but you are with us. This is what I like most
Which
because
is,
I've seen, sorry?
sorry to interrupt there, which is another point. So in contrast to the three amateurs of us, we have an expert on streaming here.
Yeah. Is there a seminar we could attend to figure this stuff out, Dave?
Oh yeah. It's I've made so many investments in my streaming setup. We could talk offline. We'll yeah. I have a lot to share.
And sharing is caring. And starting with that, it would be lovely if you share some of your career background with us,
Sure.
that you share some of the experiences you have won, and especially going directly into that when COVID started, a lot of things exploded in a positive
Yeah.
and a negative way. And we would like to have your share on mind on that one as well. Welcome, Dave.
Oh, thanks for having me. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Was about time.
At that point, there should be like an applause button with
Here we are.
yeah. So I am David Mario Smith. Funny thing, my whole life I've never used my middle name. I just used the middle initial. When I first started my first job experience at Gartner, there was another David Smith, David Mitchell Smith. So we both had the same middle initial. I had to spell out my middle name for the first time in my life, which is interesting.
You could also have done something like in those lawyer movies or seasons. Make the first one the initial and make it D Mario Smith.
Right.
There
So,
you go.
so funny story. When I started Gartner, my first paycheck came early. Turned out I was getting his direct deposit, the other David Smith. and so I'm like, what are you pulling by last names, not employee code, right? It's like, what are you?
Ouch.
I'll bet you got to know one another real well, real
So
fast.
how I became an analyst was that broke the ice because he was already an analyst. And at that time, I was a support person. And he sort of began to be one of my early mentors. We actually wrote a research note together, and the byline was David Smith, and figure out who wrote what, right? Yeah, so starting from Gartner, I was, gosh, my first gig was covering email. Then that led into sort of covering collaboration, communications, like unified stuff, and web conferencing and video. And then that sort of led me into sort of looking at the workplace as the overall picture, right? And so how do you begin to take, whether it's messaging, chat, communication, collaboration, and then integrate that into actual business processes and business applications. So that sort of became my life work. And so I'm sort of covering now the what I call the overall umbrella term of digital workplace, but really about people and helping people get their jobs done by integrating collaboration and communication into their processes.
Seems like
That
a nice
is a cool
bite.
summary.
Yeah. Dude has got a lot of background. I mean, the fact that you were covering email as a topic
Yeah.
Yeah.
at one point, you're not an old guy, but you're well seasoned.
It's funny. I remember, I cut my teeth at Gartner, and back in those days, the analyst ranks that you guys know was I wouldn't say cutthroat, but we had very rigorous peer review processes. So you would write a piece of research and you'd be in a room with 10 or 12 of your not so closest friends who were just gonna tear it and rip it apart. I mean, you sort of build some thick skin, for back in those days.
Welcome to peer review.
Yeah.
Exactly. I tell my kids now, I was like, you guys are soft. We came up tough.
That were the times when we had chaps, me as a customer, Michael Maus as one of the CRM gurus, and one of the former analysts I have met very often on conferences was a female colleague who had ancestors in Germany, and she said after the fourth meeting within a time frame from 1.5 years, Ralph, I'm getting nervous. You're wearing a hat similar to mine. I see you sometimes more often than my husband. What's in here? And I said, just relax. We just share a mutual interest in CRM. Yeah, that's the story. And interesting enough was the attitude in these days in not being empathic with your co-workers or knowledgeable team members was something which had nothing to do with sportive and being a bit competitive. This was more or less something what I honestly do not like. I prefer that I can unite with people I like, I love to work with, and with a certain respect for each other. There is a little teasing here, a little teasing there. That's fine. But it's nothing that you get torn apart by colleagues which show no better. And that is a point where we come directly from that anecdote to the hard, realistic life, such as what was your observation when from day 1 to day 2, boom, Shazam, COVID happened, and everybody had to run. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
to home.
yeah. Run home. We had to. It's
Run,
so funny.
it is COVID.
Yes. And so here, I'm in San Mateo, California, the Bay Area. I think we're one of the first areas to besides Seattle, so to completely just shut things down. And I remember, thinking okay, wow, because I'm an independent analyst, right? A lot of my stuff is face to face. I'm traveling a lot, a couple times a month. What do I do now, right? And so we're talking about live stream before, right? That's how I got into live streaming because it was like, how do I start talking to people who I can't see face to face, but and so I began to, my first gig, job came from a well-known tech company here in the Bay, and the event went virtual. And so I was asked to present, at this summit. It was talking about, employee experience and workplace and so forth. And so I remember them sending me all this attaché, this hard shell case of all this equipment. I mean, there were guys at my door dressed in black. I thought, look like MI6 agents or something. And I had to sign off. I'm like, what is in this thing, right?
SWAT team arrived.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. This was self-destruct in 5 seconds, right? Yeah, it was self-destruct in 5 seconds. And so I remember opening it up and I saw all this equipment. There was camera, microphone, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And so they walked me through this thing. They used what's that live streaming thing? Oh my god, I'm drawing a blank on the name. It's sort of like this remote control sort of canvas where you can like display like your live stream guests and all this stuff. I forget the name of it now.
Oh,
But you know what I'm talking about? Is I forget the name of it. But so they had a whole laptop remote controlled, had that up, put the mic up, had the lights going, and they literally produced an entire show. Me and my little office here, and producer had the lighting right. Even though my lighting wasn't optimal at the time, they did some funky tricks and edited and yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, and so
Wow.
I took note of all the materials that they used. And then, so when they're like, now you got to send the stuff back, I'm like, okay, good. So the same guys in black came to the door and I had to ship it back. It actually came from London, which is funny. They sent it from
Oh,
London. Yeah, it was a wild thing.
spare
But
no expense.
yeah, but the show went off right. It was well produced. I did like a 15-minute segment. It was great. But then I took note of all the inventory of the items, and then I said, you know what? Let me invest in this. 'Cause I think if we're going to be home now because of the pandemic, I may need to do more of this since I can't be in person anymore. And
okay.
so that's what led me into live streaming, and I got equipment. Amazon was my friend, and I
Yep.
found out that I wasn't the only one with this idea. And so there was an Amazon backlog in getting some of the materials.
No green screen available. No,
Yeah,
no
no ring
cameras
lights.
for
Yeah, no
devices,
ring
no
lights, nothing. Yeah, it was it
Yeah.
was a huge
So
backlog. But
it
glad I
was
did it
not
because
it wasn't sold out. It just became more expensive. Yeah.
exactly it was a supply chain issue.
And
No.
you still use that fabulous equipment you
Yeah,
made notes on and fell in love with.
I did, and then I've now improved it. Right, so then you go on this whole foray, where your your credit card has now become unlimited, and so you're in buying things. But okay, I need to get this thing, and then that thing, and then the next thing you're like, why have I bought all this stuff? But there was a rhyme or reason because now I'm using external camera, external microphone. I've got a light to the right, 45 degree. I'm learning about lighting and all this stuff, and it's like I've learned a lot more that's going to help me in the future. Just from just by of necessity having to do it.
Yeah.
Than not having to do it at all. So I think the necessity of having to go that route was definitely helpful. So one thing, to answer your question about the pandemic, the necessity to do things outside of the ordinary has been beneficial.
And it has been a matter of survival of the fittest and smartest
Exactly.
and quickest, such as if you were not ordering fast enough, you won't get anything. And the green
Exactly.
screens were out. And we started with StreamYard and green screens in the background, or natural backgrounds, which were
Yeah.
created like Thomas once. It was a challenge. And
Yeah.
seeing what the equipment is capable of or no longer capable of, yeah, because
Yeah.
it is so consuming. And then the
Absolutely.
experiences I had with Teams and with Zoom,
Yeah.
and then back to that experience, what did you observe were people from your expert perspective successfully using, and which was the, from your observation, nicest adoption?
Yeah, so it's funny because I think one of the things that the pandemic sort of taught us was that we're human, right? I think
What?
I think one of the big things like now everyone's on Zoom, kids are home, dogs are barking. It was like, yeah, I actually have a life outside of work. You crazy people. I before that 9 a.m. meeting, you saw me all bright-eyed and clean. I just dropped the kids off, and so I'm a real person. I've got a family. I was doing stuff. So now everyone's seeing all of that, right? The kids are walking in. The dogs actually come in the office. We're seeing people's human existence and their human experience
Yeah.
in their home, and then some people started getting, a little self-conscious. I don't have a good background, I don't have a small apartment. It just doesn't look good. And I think one of the big lessons people learned was like, relax. It's okay.
Correct.
You don't have to go to Amazon right away like I did and and buy up a bunch of stuff. Just be who you are. You're human. We're all going through the same lived experience at the same time. And I think that's one thing, we're all going through it at the same time. And I think Yeah.
tend to sort of disagree, at least to some extent, because you do not want Ralph to remove his background. You really don't.
He
We kind of
knows
fell in love
what's
with that window behind
behind
him.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you go to one of our first episodes, you have seen my old office. And the best was the disguised roll-ups from Deutsche Telekom, where I did some promotion for free for these chaps, just to
Yeah.
disguise my bookshelves. And to add on, not properly organized bookshelves like in these background pictures where they goof you that everything is like in proper order. No, not
Yeah.
with me. I use this. Yeah.
That's what I
Other story.
love my screen. I never have to clean my apartment ever.
You just keep it in. Yeah, and in a situation like this, where you're not like going crazy movements. You're just talking, right? So you don't need anything like crazy in the back. So the backgrounds work, and that's one thing we find out that people were introduced to Zoom backgrounds, right? And, and so they're like, my apartment's messy. No longer. Right now, I'm on a tropical island somewhere, and
that was a lot of people's first introduction to the idea of the digital workplace.
Exactly, because grandmas now can talk to their grandkids, and so the whole digital workplace transformation began to extend beyond just the office. People at work. Now grandma can talk to the grandkids. Now grandma's using Zoom. Grandma's no idea what Zoom is, but now she's learned to navigate Zoom, and grandma can even put backgrounds down. So I think that the transformation extended beyond the work part into our personal lives, which is interesting. Yeah.
But there's still the phrase digital workplace. It still says work on it. So yeah, I mean it's not a personal thing, it's a business thing. But even so, I don't know that anyone has a really good definition of it. It's like, I know it when I see it, but I'll bet you have a definition for it.
It's funny because I'm actually more like you. So I have a working definition, it's the virtualized, representation of the work, whatever, right?
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, right. So it's so it's this virtual replica of your work. But you're right, and so back to Ralph's question, the pandemic then showed us that no, work is not some place. It's not even virtual per se. It's this living, breathing amalgamation of you and your relationship with other people, that you're working with, and that relationship also extends to your kids that you have to drop off in the morning before that first meeting, right? It's this whole experience of you, and then how does the company and employer now support that kind of work? Because now you're looking at not so much work for work's sake, it's the person. And so the workplace is actually the people. And then it's from the people then moving back to how do you support how they work. So if to reimagine the definition is the digital workplace is really an experience of people in a community, sharing and working together.
Right. And for a lot of that time, as long as we're still talking about pandemic, the digital workplace wasn't just for working people. It was for the kids that you used to be dropping off at school too.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they weren't going there anymore. They were having their own Zoom meetings.
Yes, exactly. And I had to be, we all had to become, for those that have kids, teachers. And you realize, oh wow, teachers really do a lot of work because
Oh God, yes.
I talk to some parents, they're like, I see when my kid gets in trouble in school. Little Johnny's unruly.
How do I give my own kid detention?
Yeah, exactly, right?
And ground them. No
Yeah,
Zoom
But
access.
then you have them more.
So yeah.
Oh, well, just cut off the Wi-Fi time.
Oops. You cut off the Wi-Fi time, yeah.
That's almost
Screen
an
time.
inhuman punishment.
Yeah. But I think the worst effect of the pandemic, especially with the kids, it was math. I think a lot of the kids from different parents I spoke, it's just hard to teach math over Zoom or or whatever, right? It's just that's where I think a lot of the kids got impacted worse, I think, in the math stuff. Yeah.
Whereas there should be plenty of experience for exactly like that. So if you're looking at a tiny little country like Australia, there's a little bit of towns and cities, metropolises around the fringes. And then there's this vast thing they call Outback, where kids go to school. And their school was, for ages, that was ham radio. So,
interesting.
and I mean, there needs to be experience, plenty of experience on how to do funny things like derivations or integrals or other mathematics stuff without being right in front of the kid.
Yeah. I just got PTSD when you mentioned derivatives. I'm like, oh my God. I've heard that stuff in a while. I started sweating, like, oh my God, do I have a test?
And in between, Ralph is trying to put his humanistic education into picture by putting a globe into the background.
Not only that, but also the digital workplace.
Yes.
That's only a writing, so you don't see the workplace. Everything in times of deepfake can claim to be something, anything. Like we had today, the news about, or was it yesterday, the news about the explosion at the Pentagon.
At the Pentagon, yes.
Which
yes, it was
very newsworthy.
It was it was fake. Yeah, that's the scary stuff too. As you can tell, I'm a music aficionado, and I tell you, man, I'm seeing where it was like, I think someone did a fake of Eminem's voice. I guess you can sort of take the impulse of someone's voice, put lyrics, and then have that in that person's voice, say the rap lyrics. So they were like doing like Eminem rapping something that Eminem never rapped, but they were able to, with AI, use his voice and recreate a song, from original song using his voice, where people thought it was actually him. It's kind of scary.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
Definitely. Yeah,
Scary for him. I mean, that's someone could eat into his revenue stream.
Yes, for you and I, it's like, who cares, right? For Eminem, it's like, hey, I make millions with this voice, right?
But back to the very original. So a part of the workplace is this funny thing that's pronounced dead for 2 decades now. The email. How is it kicking? Is it kicking? Is it still kicking?
Yeah. So email is dead. Long live email. Right. It's one of those things that will never die. Right. And I think what's happening is we're just seeing. So one thing in the collaboration space, nothing's ever done away with. Nothing ever dies. It just gets built on top of. Right. And so so like voicemail never went away. It just just got built on top of, right? So email doesn't go away. It just got built upon with persistent chat, which actually was built upon from, remember the IRC back in the days, right? So I remember when I first saw Slack, I'm like, dude, I remember in college, this is the IRC. We used to, we used to do this stuff. And so we're seeing where, so email, the whole concept of email, or I guess the inbox metaphor, right? We're seeing that now, but the metaphor is now the hub. So like you look at whether it's Slack, whether it's Click from Zoho, right? Whether it's Teams from Microsoft, every sort of communication collaboration vendor, productivity vendor has this sort of persistent chat hub, which gives context to conversations, right? That's the email. That's that sort of next evolution of messaging. And so while they'll still have email, we can still send email. What the email now can be sort of subsumed into that sort of conversation of workspace. That's sort of the next iteration. So it's email doesn't die. It just sort of gets morphed into this more persistent, asynchronous, contextual environment.
Yeah, but now then I have this type of email and the other type of email and whatnot email. So call it Slack, Teams, WhatsApp, and whatnot.
Yeah.
to name another one. So the challenge then is that my personal efficiency is totally and utterly gone, because I have a hard time remembering where I last communicated with Ralph or Marshall. Well, I might even have 25 email addresses, and they are not moved into one inbox.
Absolutely. And so that's that, I guess, what I would call the signal to noise ratio, right? And so what
Even
I
if it's all
think,
signals.
yeah, it's a lot of signal, right? But I think what's happening is, we're seeing where I think the evolution will be that metaphor of the hub, like, that sort of space where you can have everything in context. That's going to emerge more. So, like I said, we're seeing that with Click and, with from Ring Central. Even Zoom now has the Zoom chat, right? We're seeing this sort of move towards that contextual conversational workspace that sort of takes the place of having to check my email every day. If everyone I need to speak with is in the space, I don't have to email them separately. Even though I can do that, if the email gets integrated within that space, then I still have email, but it's just in this contextual environment. So that's where I think we're going to see it moving. Yeah.
Is that the rebirth or the next iteration of the once famous unified inbox?
That so the unified, yes. So that's exactly so. The unified. I remember in the early days that I used to cover this stuff, right? So the unified inbox was basically just multiple email accounts. Now I think the concept is morphed into what I was just saying, where it's not. No, what's going to be that central hub that ties everything together, right? If my day-to-day job is, say, CRM, and I'm in Salesforce all day, right? What's that conversational? Yeah. What's that conversational space, right? That's going to give me context for my, internal colleagues, as well as if I need to reach out to customers. So I'm thinking that persistent chat messaging hub is going to sort of be that contextual place where email then begins to surface in, and all your other stuff begins to surface in as well too. And we're seeing signs that, right? Even look at the like the Zoho stuff, right? Where I can go from Click or Work Drive and have everything surface within there. Right, yeah.
And Trident, yeah.
So yeah, exactly. Try it. Yeah. So it's like what's going to be, so the unified inbox is, I like to call it the entry point. What's that now? That entry point, that sort of UX, that universal user interface that's going to be the contextual entry point for everything that I do throughout the day. Yeah.
Where do you see the transformation opportunity for the organizations aside of the unified inbox, where I do see an honest value also for me, and I try very hard with my AKAs to flip around and do my business, such as I have 3 smartphones out of the old days with 3 different providers, because when I was doing business with a telecom, I had to use one of their brands. Yeah. They could see it by the numbers. So if I would have done business with Deutsche Telekom and having a Vodafone phone number, mobile, the transformation opportunity to organizations in the digital workplace, where do you see them?
Yeah, so I think that's, and I think back to the pandemic is where it's looking at, and so there's 2 sort of trends. So there's the technical transformation, and then there's the cultural transformation, right? The cultural transformation began to happen. It's funny. I remember going to conferences, pre-pandemic, right? And it's like just about digital workplace transformation. People wrote books about it and did keynote speeches about it, but none of them knew how to do it. The pandemic, came. What's the famous Mike Tyson quote? Everyone has a plan till they get punched in the mouth.
Yeah.
we all got punched in the mouth in 2020. We all just like, whoa, what just happened to us, right? And then transformation happened to us, and we had to sort of go with it because we had this universal need. We had to communicate. We had to carry on business. Grandma had to speak to the grandkids. Ooh, video. I've been covering collaboration for years. I've been talking about the benefits and virtues of video for years. No one listened to me. We got punched in the mouth. Oh, we need video. Let's cue up the Zoom. And so I think it's the universal need where transformation begins to happen to you, rather than you trying to inorganically force it to happen. You can't force transformation. It has to sort of happen to you. So most digital workplace transformation has to be top down and bottom up, and they have to meet in the middle. And that's it's the universal need that has to happen to everyone on a whole. So you can't sort of force it.
Yeah, I think you said the important word there is need.
Yeah.
It can't be driven by something you want to do, because if it's something you just want to have, you push it out and you push it out and you push it out and you work on it and it grows by increments.
Yeah.
When you need it, you make it happen now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. We all became video experts, Zoom became the darling of the industry, right? Oh my God, it's so funny. I remember having kids, doing Zoom classes. I remember, did you guys hear about the Zoom bombing incidents where people would hack into Zooms?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my daughter was on, so happened to her twice on a class call, and she's also part of a swim team. Also happened on a group call with the swim team. Someone hacked in there and posted images I cannot even explain. I'm still stuttering to explain to my daughter what she saw. It was horrible.
We probably
Horrible.
don't want to get into this here.
Oh my God, it was horrible. Again, I'm still stuttering because I'm like, I don't know what to say. But I remember, so that was one of the things. So then people were like, okay, how do we secure Zoom? So now you have people who are, now they're using video, grandma's watching the kids. Now security becomes this top issue. So it was beneficial for organizations because now we work from home, we're all remote, but how do we still maintain a level of security? And I think that began to sell, employees on, okay, let's have now sanctioned or blessed IT tools from the enterprise. And so I began to see organizations began to ship to the employees, webcams and ring lights even. And so it work from home became this thing where the organization began, okay, let's structure it, let's organize it, and let's make it beneficial to have a unified experience for everyone. So that's, I guess, the start of the transformation. Yeah.
So stick a bit to schools. So from what I have seen in US and in German schools, there was quite a difference in digital learning environments, which is basically the kids' digital workplace, right? So how did you experience with your kids how that evolved, apart from Zoom getting a bit more secure?
Yeah. Oh my God. While I realized that I hated second and third grade math, and I forgot a lot of stuff, like these pesky fractions, Oh man, I was like, second grade math was like it was simple yet so complex. I'm like, what is this? I know this stuff, right? So I was
multiply.
yes. Oh my God, I was Googling every day. I'm like, I know how to do this, but because other thing too is that they're doing it in a different way, right? So like they're doing the math and so like we would do it in a different sequence. They're learning a whole new sequence. So I have to like Google and find out how they're learning it, and so I don't mess him up, my son in what he was doing. But yeah, it was definitely a lot of learning on the fly, learning how to even explain something, different concepts with the kids at home, and then Zoom was basically, I think the kids, man, we got to give it to our kids. They're really efficient. I mean, they're just resilient. Once we got them up going that first week or so, they were on it. They were, they get on Zoom, without any sort of issue, or they were good at it. They just took the ball and ran with it. They were like, we're here, and they were actually probably more efficient than we were actually.
Yeah.
How about the teachers?
The teachers. So that's what there are a lot of times I had to walk in the room, and remember, Dave, make sure you have, clothes on, top, your kids, what I'm saying? Like, don't have, the short shorts on. Make sure you have, full dress because your kids and their classmates are on the Zoom now. Do not embarrass your son. And so,
Yeah.
Try to make sure I was presentable every morning. Like you roll out of bed, make sure the camera's on. You're like, okay, am I dressed?
Dad, stop! You're embarrassing me.
Yeah, exactly, right. It's like, Dad. Turns off the webcam, like, Dad, come on.
The embarrassment.
What did I tell you
already,
about coming in here when I'm in school?
The embarrassment is already Dad being there at all.
Exactly. But I must say, the kids kind of, they fell right in line, with work from home and Zoom schools. And I mean, they were great. They were great.
To be fair, the advantage that the kids have is they're designed to learn. Young people are information sponges.
Absolutely.
And that's something they have in their favor, and hopefully they'll stick with them when they get into the workplace, assuming the workplace is anything like it is now
No,
when they get there.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, there's the question. What will it look like when our kids, well, not our kids, I don't have any, when your kids get into the professional world?
Yeah, it's funny because I think we are building, I guess what's the term we used to use some years ago, digital natives, right? Where we have kids. Yeah, I mean, because yeah, right. They're just used to knowledge at their fingertips in a way that whenever I remember because I have a daughter too. She's a little older than my son, and I remember when I transitioned from my I used to have a BlackBerry, and then I had an iPhone. And I remember her mom, my wife, she still had a BlackBerry, so she's on my iPhone, screening, touch screen and doing them. She grabbed my wife's, BlackBerry, was like, it's broken. What's going on? But she can touch and move things, But now we're growing with kids who are like they're used to this. They're used to technology. They're used to the iPads. They're used to just again knowledge at their fingertips. Google and TikTok and Instagram. Although they're probably not supposed to at a certain age. I think it was 13 the cutoff age, but they're used to social media and a level of access that we're just we didn't grow up with, so they're used to that. So I think going to the workplace, their whole mindset of what work is going to be totally different. I don't even know what it's going to be, when they get to work, because even the generation now that's in work, their expectations are way different than ours are.
Yeah. It's fair to say that what we think is going to be there in the future, we're probably wrong about.
Yeah.
Because we don't know what the next need is. But that being said, what do you think is still missing? What do you think will be there?
Wow,
that isn't now.
Not,
Go on, look into the future. You're on the spot.
The crystal ball moment. Yeah. So I think, right. I think there still is, and we're seeing it now. So a lot of the tech companies now are trying to figure out how do we finagle people to get back into the office, right?
Yes.
So they're all starting. Oh, we're all about the employees. We're all about flexible work. By October 2023, we want people to be in for at least 4 days a week, right? But so we're seeing this sort of shift where their flexibility, and I think part of it too is the financial burdens now of real estate issues and people have having to close office space and so forth. So there's a lot of issues to that, but we're seeing now this shift now to more of a hybrid work. The model I'm seeing so far is at least 3 days a week. In actual office, at least 3 days. So I'm seeing that model roll out. But we're also seeing where people now feel, how do you sort of maintain flexibility and also begin to mandate that sort of, because it still is a mandate. Whether it's 3 days, that's not flexibility. That's a mandate. You're saying you're in not so much uncertain terms. I need to come in 3 days a week.
Oh, but you get to pick which 3 days.
Yeah, you get to pick which 3 days, but make sure it's 3. So I think we'll see. Again, more flexibility. I think we're going to see more focus on the employee. We saw that during the pandemic because we had to, and people had to be more empathetic. But we're going to see how that empathy now begins to sort of face reality. Okay, we still need to make a profit, guys. That's because what is it like? There's this what is it, working out loud now and new work, and I don't want to work or whatever. Right? There's all these new movements now, right? So I think it's all going to meet ahead where the employee had like a little upper hand during the pandemic, and now I think the employee is trying to assert more authority and dominance. I think. Yeah.
Dave, explain from your understanding working out loud, please.
Oh God, yeah. So working out loud
is enough.
Yeah. It's this concept of this sort of transparent community, sort of aspect of work where everyone is. When you're in a community, you're sharing, right? You want to be able to contribute, and so you contribute to the community, and also get back from that community. What you also contribute as well to. So it's a community, it's a communal aspect of work where it's community, you're sharing, it's kumbaya, we're toasting marshmallows, everyone loves each other, and then
right.
But it's from a conceptual standpoint, it makes sense, right? It's how do you begin to show up to work, and where it's more of a community where you're contributing and also learning as well too. So it's transparency, it's learning, it's training, it's sharing, and it's iced coffee and lattes and
Okay, that sounds good. In how far are things like, or topics like quiet quitting, loud quitting, which is apparently a new thing, or working out loud, are these related to changes in the workplace?
Yeah, I think so. I think when people began to have all that sort of autonomy and flexibility from working from home coming from the pandemic, they began to realize, because I know, as you guys, I know a lot of people moved away from the Bay Area. They moved to Seattle, to Denver, to Austin. They moved to the South, right? They say, I don't need to be here. My brother moved from New York to Florida. It's like I can work from anywhere, and so they're this expectation of what work is and where I need to work began to change. But quiet quitting and all that stuff began to be met with, let's do large layoffs. And this is our third round, 10,000. And so it's like, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? And so quiet quitting meant layoffs. And now people are like, I need to behave a little bit and kind of compromise at work.
Got to stay employed to share those.
Yeah, I got to stay employed. Yeah. I can't quite quit if I'm not employed, right?
The thing is, if we are too honest as independent analysts, we get, as you described, the counter reaction from potential customers as vendors or people which could use our advice, but are still resistant to pay for it. And if we then blame them to kick people in their asses and lay them off and make this too loud and too visible, then they do not, even if they haven't loved us or liked us, they will not start to do so. So this is when the messiahs of CRM always is running around with his iPhone and says, I steer my whole organization with that iPhone, with my apps and the Blue Cloud products. He no longer is going for that part of the show. Trust me.
Well, he doesn't have financial software in his portfolio.
He has in his app store, but probably he does not know his app store.
I think
I wouldn't be surprised. Honest.
I mean, one of the big things, especially like with this whole layoff thing, and you guys know, because we've talked at different conferences and events about this stuff. We have it's when you begin to hire for hiring's sake, just because because of the talent war, and you want to sort of keep that talent from going to someplace else, you just begin to hire people, and then they sit there and they do nothing, and then you have where this is not sustainable, and so. And I think Elon gave everyone the excuse, I can fire people now. We can lay off everyone, 10,000 today, 20,000 tomorrow. It's like, because they began to hire people. And you guys know, I know people from different tech companies, whether it's Google, whatever, who were hired and weren't doing anything. They were just hired to sit there just so that they can take them out of the talent pool. They weren't doing anything. Isn't
that a reason to fire the management who hired instead of the other people? I mean,
right?
That would be a clear mind thought.
Because they could have given them something to do.
Exactly. No, and that's the whole like craziness of this all. It's like we went through this whole this hiring spree. We're erecting different buildings and office space to house these people, but they weren't really doing anything, right? And you're right. So the management level is actually the problem,
But no need to get into that now. From a pendulum perspective, so we got this kick in 2020 to got kicked out of office. Yeah? So the pendulum swung. Moved very, very hard into one direction. And now we see a trend back towards the office. Partly driven by tremendously expensive real estate still being available, plus
Yes.
physically meeting still having some advantages.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you see, how far do you see this pendulum swing, and what technological advancements that we needed to create, which one will probably be moved back because they are no more that important?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, and to your point, it is a pendulum swing. And so, and, with pendulums, if it swings, extreme one direction, this is going to come and overcorrect, right? And
Yeah.
so we're now seeing that overcorrection happening, and so, yeah, so we're going back. Yeah, I think it's, who was it? Like, I think Meta the other day, I heard, where they're mandating, back, by October, y'all got to come back. Y'all just have to come back. And I think that's the same before. We're going to see where this sort of overcorrection sort of averages out to this 3 day at least per week. Was it Monday? Wednesday, Thursday, whatever it is. The foosball table is not going to be the big draw anymore. The free dry cleaning and free food is not going to make your workplace. The next iteration, okay, with this now new hybrid work, how are we going to make it worthwhile for people? Because I think the expectation now from the pandemic, people are like, no, I matter, right? Yeah, I know I'm at danger of being laid off, or whatever, but I still matter. And so you can't put that, toothpaste back in the tube now, because people have already tasted the flexibility. And so it's going to be hard to, completely take that away. So we're going to see this sort of move to what I call workplace agnostic, where, yeah, you're going to need to come back 3 days a week, but, let's sort of be more flexible as to where and how we do that. And so we're going to see, again, more investment in home office setups, from webcams and, ring lights, that Amazon hopefully has available. Right? But we're going to see more of that partnership, where it has to be more of a relationship between the employee and the employer, and where they're working, and having parity of experience between my home office being on video and in the office on video. Because if there's no parity, right, then that remote worker, I may be in the office Monday, Wednesday, but if Friday I'm working from home and my experience is suffering, then I may feel like less of a valued employee. So there's going to need to be parity from the home office to the work from home or Starbucks office, wherever you you may be.
Bring my
When you
camera to Starbucks.
Yeah, exactly, right.
when you
Oh,
do research, Dave, what is, as an independent researcher, and you would like to dig in some more stuff, what are for your job the reliable sources you dig in? If you look for somebody else's research to slice and dice it in a different way, or get your own experiences into it, where would you
Yeah.
go for covering the digital workplace topic?
Yeah, and so that's where I think, just being in this industry, for such a long time,
Mm.
um, LinkedIn is my home. And so
Ah.
from there, so yeah, so every and not to, hope Gartner's not listening, but every end user I've ever encountered, who I've developed personal relations with, are on LinkedIn. It's funny. I remember when I first started live streaming, I was just on YouTube before they opened up the broadcast stuff on LinkedIn, and I would put stuff on YouTube all the time. And I remember when I first started live streaming on LinkedIn, the most engagement I've ever had, because it made something like, oh, that's where my audience is. That's the people who would care about what I do
Uh-huh.
know me. They're right there on LinkedIn. That's my professional network. They already know what I do, so they would care more about what I'm talking about, rather than some random person in the abyss that is YouTube, or even Twitter for that matter. It's just a wild, wild west. But people on LinkedIn they know what I do, and so they'll be more interested in what. So I'll be able to see more engagement there. Yeah, than anything. So as an independent, I go there first, and then I utilize the vendor relationships, because through vendors, when I write research, I also ask for a lot of customer references. And so,
Ah,
yeah,
okay.
so send me 3 to 5 customer references of doing what you said this product can do. And so I build
Right.
that
Yeah.
rapport that way as well too. Yeah.
And then you dig in for search the topic in LinkedIn and find some people which have done either some experience write-ups or do
Exactly.
some focused research on that. Hmm.
Exactly. And like I said, so the end users then on LinkedIn, whether, so I can go into my LinkedIn now. I'm like, you know what? what would a CIO's opinion be of this particular vendor feature or say it's generative AI, right? I have a few CIO friends, right? LinkedIn, hey, what do you think about this? And so I'm getting remember I mentioned leaving Gartner, you lose the sort of not only do you lose the sales team as an independent, you lose the direct end user. LinkedIn has been that sort of gap filler, to get back to the end user. And also, like I mentioned, I write for CIO, so that's also been helpful as well too. So it's been useful to tap my close network. Again, people who care about what I do, like, the people who care about what you do are in your professional network. They just know what you do, more so than even Twitter or, like YouTube.
Judging the cultural differences between just 3 known countries, an island called Great Britain, Europe,
That's
and
several islands, at least 2.
yeah,
Well,
the ones didn't want to be any longer Europe, but their decision, they had too much beef, BSE driven, so they came to the decision. But aside of these prejudices, I do care a lot of and feed them. There is, I thought, an adoption rate or cultural differences or regional differences, such as if you go for the good old Buck Rogers movies in the 90s, you would find that French people would have technology advertisements with Buck Rogers from the 30s, black and white, and show that there is progress. If you go for the Americas, you would see an advertisement on something sexy new features in the latest, either the one with Queen in the background sound or the TV series with the one who is Buck Rogers back in the 20th century. Yeah. The comparison between these cultural levels, not only in advertisement, but the adoption back to digital workplace, have you observed there several differences and where in specific?
Yeah, it's interesting as you say that. So there is now, I think, just because the mobile and cloud, the transformation to cloud and mobile has, I guess, sort of democratized. Now, there may be some nuanced differences that I may not be aware of, in different regions, but I think overall, the democratization of technology, with cloud access and mobile to anything you want, I think it's sort of leveled the playing field a bit across the board. So, you go, besides the specific cultural, regional differences, I think from a technology standpoint, we have access to the same things, but we are seeing where here in America, there is more of living to work mindset than working to live, and so we are horrible at that, and that's one thing I think we need to change it. Whereas, like, again, the pandemic showed us that there's more to life than this job. Like, I am a person,
Well said.
Yeah, I think I see more of that around the world than here in America. We're definitely trying to drive people to the point of no return, to the brink.
Yeah, we
Why
don't
is
know
that?
how to take time off.
Exactly.
We've never
Exactly.
figured
And
it out.
yeah, and we're not any more productive than anywhere else, which is the funny thing. Like I said, we're not. There's no higher productivity here driving people, to the point of to the brink of no return than anywhere else. We're actually, in some cases, less productive. I think.
Yeah,
Because
I
because
believe you're right.
What do you think is the cause of that?
it's just this over hyping. So it's capitalism, but which is
Well,
but
capitalism
yeah,
exists in other regions
yes,
of this
no,
planet too.
but it's not bad. But when it's but when culturally it's you just again we're just looking at the employee as to what they can do for you, get you, and not as a person. And so there is a less of this relationship, this bi-directional relationship, where it's like it's people over profit. What's that saying? They always do people over profit. When it's profit over people, and again, because capitalism isn't bad. We all we have to make a living, but when it's people over profit, just for profit's sake, there becomes a disconnect. And so that's why we begin to see here in the U.S. and everywhere else too, but we definitely issues with mental health and burnout and so forth, which I think what led to a lot of the quiet quitting as well too. People were just burnt out,
Wow. So with 5 minutes left, are we now getting into employee experience? You think we can cover that real fast?
Yeah, so EX, if you're gonna, we can abbreviate it too if you want. Right, yeah. So I think employee experience, it goes back to what we're saying about, working out loud and what's the other one? New work movement and I don't want to work movement. And
Take this job and shove it.
Yeah. Anti-work, I hate my boss, right? Where I think we are seeing, where people, kind of, companies we've known for years. I think, that the employee engagement, employee satisfaction, experience has a huge impact on CX and the bottom line. I know some people hate to sort of, make it that black and white, but there is a direct, sometimes indirect correlation, especially if it's like customer facing staff where, their experience, especially, support staff, their experience has an impact on the customer experience. And so, but EX is just as important as CS, because if you don't have EX or CX and also your ecosystem experience, so there's three. There is the employee experience, the customer experience, and so the ecosystem experience, the partner experience. How are people experiencing the workplace, right? How am I experiencing being here? How am I experiencing this technology? Is it working for me or is it not? And I think Ralph mentioned adoption before. That's what we used to see, like adoption suffered with technology because people are like, this doesn't help my work. And so we're seeing now, how do you begin to get employee requirements before technology investment decisions up front rather than just say, here's this new collaboration tool, go forth now and collaborate. When no, I need to, how does this help me get my job done? So we're seeing more of a focus on, okay, let's get employee requirements first up because that's a part of the EX. Yep. Let's engage employees. Let's be more collaborative. Let's just sort of change the culture around sharing. And then we're going to see how that begins to impact CX, especially for customer-facing staff. So that's, I think, the heart of the transformation. How do you sort of be more people-centric and then go from the people to the technology, right? But start from the people first.
And give the framework, the name, organizational experience, and then you have the synthesis. My friend Guido was mentioning some earlier CRM convo of and was showing some of the informations to us. And he's having also some great stuff in English language already done, as the research was done in German, which comes to my very curiosity-driven question. Where have you seen a center of expertise if it's going to information and expertise in center of competence on the digital workplace aside of LinkedIn?
Yeah. Like companies, organizations, I think gosh, Nike is a good one. Where and so this is interesting. I'm going to name Nike, Bank of America, and what they've done. So besides the, obviously the mobile app and, the cloudifying of everything, and everything is, except every technology application is accessible via mobile device in the cloud. There is a focus on training and learning. And most digital transformations you'll see, I'll bet any money, there is a shift in the learning experience. So you mentioned expertise, because you have to be sharing, and you have to, for one, sharing, but allowing people also to contribute, and there has to be this bi-directional loop of sharing and learning. And if the learning management systems have not improved, you're not going to have a good digital workplace, because knowledge is not going to be able to be circulated throughout the organization, because that's where innovation comes. When knowledge is circulating and moving, that's where innovation comes, and that's where true digital transformation comes. Again, that's focused on people and how they work, where you can have people thriving. So I guess that's working out loud. I guess that's what it is, right? Whoa.
Sounds good.
Now that we are approaching the top of the hour with a few seconds left, it's probably time to do what we usually do, which is asking for famous last words for the session, not terminally. So, and it's usually a bit about the glass ball, which we already pulled out a bit earlier. So what I'm interested in is what we've seen at the beginning of the pandemic is Zoom becoming a rock star.
Yeah.
This faded out because other companies like tiny little Microsoft here out of the area figured out that they can do a lot with Teams,
Yes.
which ate big time into Zoom revenues. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now we also have seen Slack evolving a heck of a lot.
Yeah.
And now the fun part is Teams is a very corporate environment. I mean, it was owned by one company right from the beginning.
Yeah.
Slack is no more independent. Zoom still is.
Yeah.
So now, from an analyst point of view, do you see them as an acquisition target? And if so, by who?
Zoom. Yeah. So interesting. So what I'm seeing, I'll start here. We are seeing this evolution of what I would call digital workplace platforms, right? Where, so you remember, so I always take Zoho as the reference point because they're sort of doing now where I'm seeing the industry going. So if you look at Zoho, so if you look at Zoho One, right, that's everything, right? That's an infrastructure play as well as individual apps for every line of business, right? From CRM, marketing, and then there is the core communication and collaboration stuff. Even now with Trident, that then begins to be integrated communication and collaboration to every line of business app, right? And then there's the core infrastructure and AI engine that gives you insights, data analytics, and all that. Zoom, now they're calling it Zoom One. Go figure, right? And which now gives you chat, right, along with the video, because they recognize, to your point, we can't just do video conferencing. There has to be adjacencies. How do you address the overall needs of the workplace? So we're seeing them expand. The closest to Zoho was Microsoft. Obviously, they're bigger than Zoho, but in terms of what they have as a platform, they have Dynamics, right? Teams. They have that sort of line of business, business infrastructure stuff, the ERP stuff, along with the communication and collaboration platform, and all the office productivity tools, right? That can run a business, right? So Zoho, Microsoft, who's it? Ring Central, again, trying to do the same thing, right? Trying to expand into beyond just the UC stuff into now chat and all that stuff, or partner with productivity vendors. Google, they have the productivity stuff laid out. You can run your business from a productivity standpoint. Google Sheets, PowerPoint. What they lack right now is the sort of line of business like CRM or marketing apps, so forth. But I anticipate they'll probably move that way too, right? So we're seeing everyone with this vision of moving to a fuller, broader digital workplace platform that has everything. And again, like little Zoho is already there, which is the funniest thing to me. But no one knows about them because they're small, but they literally have now where I see the industry moving towards. Yeah.
And I only can encourage you to look into that funny Belgian company, which is open source driven, Odoo, ODOO, as funny enough, they do have a lot of stuff which we feel good in Zoho One.
Yeah.
And we see something in between. I do not hack off my arm and they steal my legs, such as in the larger community stuff, which is not only in Redmond but in other. The pricing tags are not entrepreneur or small enterprise driven supportive. Yeah. So open source in a certain degree. Zoho One, I'm very curious where it's going forward, and I love to hear your point of view that Zoho One could be a blueprint for a lot of others.
It is, because it's which is why I love the tagline of operating systems for business, because they're thinking through, okay, how do we sort of solve for business, right? Rather than just silo app here, silo app here. No, how does this whole thing work together to solve for business? So whether that business needs recruiting, we have a solution for recruiting. We have a solution for CRM for customer support. So it's like they're doing it more from a solutions mindset than just an app, right? And I think that's the blueprint, I think, or the evolution that we'll see. And again, that's why Zoom is adding all this up. That's why everyone else is trying to add all these adjacencies, because they realize we can't be a one-trick pony. We have to broaden the platform.
Yeah. Hence my original question, which you didn't yet answer.
Now it is. Now it is.
So they are broadening it to stay independent.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. So in terms of being an acquisition target, anyone can, I guess, is, but I don't think Zoom is. You remember the whole thing they tried to acquire Five9? Was it last year or so forth?
Right.
And that fell through because, but back to your question, is because they realized that, you know what, let's begin to build this out ourselves. And that's what they do. So now they have the contact center, right, within the platform now that they were trying to buy Five9 for. Now they are building it out themselves.
They don't want to get snacked away from the market.
They don't want to slack. Exactly.
That's a good one.
I love that one.
And there's your famous last word.
I think we should stop it right here. It can't get any better from a wordplay point of view. Okay, thanks, Dave.
Nice.
This was great. This was great.
Exactly.
And thanks to everybody who is still in here.
Thank you, audience.
Thanks, everyone.
So we are going backstage now. See you next week. New show, new guest, new jokes.
Take care.